Okay, looks like it's activated.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Jimmy Speyer. I'm the founder and CEO of GlassHouse here in Franklin, Tennessee. We are a digital door knocking platform for the trades, for home services. I'm excited today to talk to Strickland Tudor, Strick, and Matt Parks. Today we're going to be talking about tech in the home services. So what does a killer tech stack look like? How does AI fit into that? What should you be thinking about in general? What are the changes in this market? I've got some people here who spent the greater parts of their career in the home service tech industry or adjacent tech industries. So I'm excited to talk to both of them today. And the three of us are just going to have a conversation about what we see and what we hear out in the market. So I'll have these guys do a quick intro, and then we're going to jump into it. Matt, why don't you start us out?
Yeah. Hey, so I'm Matt Parks. I was formerly a consultant for the home services industries, everything from roofing, plumbing, water damage, you name it. Did that for about 15 years and actually became an operator. Ran a roofing company, scaled it from roughly 7 million to 19 million in about 3.5 years. And during that process, I realized there was a lot of problems in the industry. So I exited at the beginning of 2025 to build a new solution to fix those issues. So that's kind of the overall of me. So
Cool. And what's the name of your business today?
ContractorHUB. So we run a home services platform that aggregates data from everything from CRMs, project management tools, human resources, finance, all that. So we aggregate everything and give you accurate reporting to make sure that data talks to each other.
Okay, awesome. We'll get into that some more as well as we go. Strick, how about you?
Hey, Jimmy, great to see you. Matt, pleasure to meet you. Strickland Tudor, have had the privilege, the esteemed privilege of serving the trades and tradespeople for a little over 27 years, 20 years with Enterprise Holdings. So on the fleet management side, helping contractors to better manage their fleets of vehicles. And probably more exciting over the last 7 years, I've been really invested in early mid-stage technology startups. Helped to grow a company called Schedule Engine, which was an online booking platform specifically built for the trades. We grew that from pre-revenue to a little over 20 million in 3 years. We're acquired by ServiceTitan, and I've held various executive roles in a few other technology companies over the last few years. Got to know Jimmy and the GlassHouse team. Full disclosure, have the privilege of serving as board advisor for GlassHouse. But Jimmy, thanks for the invite, and super excited for this conversation.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm excited, and yeah, we work with Strick. I met Strick. I don't even remember how I came across his name. I was looking at a business here in Nashville that was in the home service sector, and he was associated. I think I cold DM'd you on LinkedIn and like, hey, we should meet. Let's talk.
Yeah, and it worked out beautifully, didn't it?
Yeah, cold calls work. That's what I'm saying. So, cool. Well, we got a list of a couple of topics. This is not a commercial. This is actually just a discussion and conversation, and we're going to talk about stuff we are passionate about. And if you're listening to this, you're watching a couple of minute clip of it. Hopefully, you are interested in. So, first thing is, what does the tech stack look like for a home service business? What should you think about? What's important? Strick has, I think, a really good worldview and perspective on this. But like, what is it? Where do you start, and how do you think about the technology that at this point in home services, it's just embedded, it's in what we do. And so how are we thinking about how to approach that without it being scary?
Yeah, I can try to set the table for us as best possible. What's very validating is over the last, just literally the last 4 or 5 years, tens of billions with a B dollars have poured into the trades, either through private equity, predominantly through contractor acquisition, or VC through technology solutions. And it does a couple of different things. It validates that there is a critical nature and opportunity to close the digital transformation gap in the trades. It also creates massive complexity because it's a little Wild West, and there are a lot of early movers. And so, to Jimmy's comment, what I've done to try to codify this, frankly, for my own sanity, is drop it all into 3 different buckets. And so technology in the trades, Strick's 3 buckets. We've got marketplace, which would be, Google, Angie, Thumbtack, et cetera, lead gen providers. You have bucket number 2, which would be platform. And so that would be CRM for the trades, or in the trades referred to as FSMs, field service management platforms. Those would be the ServiceTitan, Workiz, House Call Pro, Jobber, ContractorHUB, et cetera. But it's your base CRM to operate your business on. The third bucket would be unique tools or point solutions that have come in, and they've solved a very specific, deep vertically understood gap that's happening in the trades. And that could be a telematics provider like LinksUp or Geotab. It could be a provider like GlassHouse that's thinking about, top of funnel lead aggregation, conversion, outbounding. And it's just tremendously exciting right now. But at the same time, while it's exciting, it can be complicated and confusing. And so that's why I'm excited to talk with Jimmy and Matt today to try to demystify some of this. But building a killer tech stack, it does fall into each of those three buckets. And then outside of the three buckets, you have a burgeoning kind of cottage industry of whether it's consulting groups or coaching groups, which many are incredible, and they help contractors hold their hand, help them make the right decisions. You've got digital marketing agencies that understand, how to play the pay to play game. But it's relatively complicated. So we're hoping to share a little bit of wisdom and demystify some of this for the team.
Okay, let's make some of this actionable then. So when you think about, you got these buckets, where do I start? I'm investing in, maybe I just acquired a home service business. I'm opening a home service business. I acquired a business in the trades, I'm a P roll up for perhaps. What is the first thing I need to think about, look at, touch, or do?
I think a big thing is understanding where your source of truth and all your data needs to actually live, and say, okay, hey, every data decision that we make is based in this platform. So I think that goes to Strick's bucket of platform. That's super important because I think, what I've seen, and it happened to me, quite frankly, in the industry, was, all this disconnected data that lives in different systems. They don't talk to each other. And what happens is you start making decisions based on all these different data points, but they're not all accurate, So I think one of the biggest wins that somebody could do would be, really establish that source of truth and do it in one platform.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, Matt, to tag on to that, when we talk about mid-market and enterprise contractors that may be a little bit more mature, they have likely already adopted a CRM platform, but the lion's share of the marketplace, and some estimates is as much as 60% of the 1 to 5 technicians set hasn't adopted a CRM platform. So when we were outbounding and asking that question, what platform do you use? Their answer would be QuickBooks. And that's right. It's a starting point, and you have to have financial fluency. But the iterations that are happening in the field service management CRM platforms in the trades provide so much more power. But to your point, if it's not integrated with your finance tool, and if the data input and the data sets are not accurate, you can't make the right decisions. So that I would totally agree with Matt. It's foundational to make sure that you know where your source of truth is. And in most cases, that's going to start with your CRM platform and coupled with your finance tool.
Yeah, that's what I tend to see. I'll just use our customers as a kind of a base for all this. So we work with businesses as small as $200,000 or $300,000 a year in revenue, kind of newer businesses. Oftentimes they tend to be franchises, and then up to businesses with $100 million, right? So we have annual revenue. So we see a pretty broad swath there. But generally speaking, because we are a system of action and we're like a tool for a specific type of use case, we always are looking at what's your FSM, what's your CRM, what's your source of truth of your data, Matt. And I just use our own business, GlassHouse, as analogous for that. I'm like, the first thing we bought when we started the company was QuickBooks, and then we immediately bought HubSpot. We went because that's a good one for a software company. Because I knew that we needed something that we would be able to say, this is where all of the transactions, the customer records, the history of the activities of the business will reside. And when I think about kind of all the other things I need to do as a business, I need to create business, I need to close business, I need to upsell people, I need to service accounts, we have to do ticket management, we have to do all these things. It's not that much different than a home service business in that regard. It's the same jobs to be done. I really wanted to find something that I could look at as, cool, this will put everything in one place, and all of the other things I need to do, even if it doesn't do them, will speak one language. And that to me was really important. I have a belief that and we'll get into more AI stuff here, right? But in this age of having AI doing things with a lot of other tools for me, I still want it all to pass through one system where everything gets normalized so that everything is passing through the place where I know it's organized. And I think almost like a lot of the FSMs, maybe the ones that have been around for a long time, the legacy word gets thrown around. really the value that they're still going to provide long-term to our industry is we want a system that normalizes the data so that everybody isn't speaking their own language.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, and that's a big problem. We notice it, we integrate with so many different CRMs and FSMs and all kinds of stuff. And we know that all their data is mapped differently in each different platform. And one of the biggest challenges that we find when we're onboarding customers is that their data is so dirty and they have no idea how bad it is. It could be something as easy as a company name being entered first name, last name of the actual contact. So that's one of the big things. And these AI tools now that are coming out are really helping to be able to sanitize that data and clean it up very, very quickly. So it doesn't take hours and hours of human labor to go in and, well, now I got to change this field and now I got to change that field. And so I think you hit the nail on the head with, having that one source of record or source of truth and making sure the data all matches,
Yeah. And Matt, the data is not static. People try to fixate on, is it an address or a customer name? And people buy and sell houses, people have babies, and kids go to college, and it's hard to keep track of all that. But that's why the data gets dirty, obviously, very quickly in some cases.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so important to be able to kind of sanitize that data live, as you're implementing something new. Like, take it as a spring cleaning. I have a client of ours that we recently onboarded, and he knew his data was bad. And when we took it in, I was like, take this as your time to do some spring cleaning, because you can actually make a lot better decisions if this stuff is actually accurate. So,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I saw that when I first got into this industry. And so my background is 15 years in vertical SaaS software companies and leading revenue teams. And when I really decided I wanted to build in the home service space 3 years ago, now be 3 years ago here next month, was I saw some gaps around how FSMs tended to think about data in general. They were all these kind of individual silos. And I believe in a system of record, don't get me wrong, but it almost felt as if the data was just put in there and then just eroded over time, to your point, Strick. It's like there wasn't a lot of mechanisms to keep it up to date, accurate, to revisit it, to utilize or benefit from a lot of that. It just kind of was like putting it in. It felt like we had just created a digital version of like some type of filing cabinet, and it wasn't getting a lot more. There was a lot of value to be derived from that. And that was part of the idea of doing GlassHouse, is like, what can we do that can augment, improve, benefit, utilize that data in a way that helps make money, which is what we're all here to do in business. Like, that's what feeds the business and helps pay for all the people and the cool stuff we get to do. And so, yeah, it just seemed like a big gap in the home service sector that FSMs and CRMs had created a repository, but not a lot of value out of at this point going into it.
Yeah, I got to double tap on that. It's 100% accurate, because the way that the FSMs were built to facilitate operational efficiency and excellence was really focused around lead, estimate, job, and then invoice and payment. And the marketing wizards and mavens care a lot about the customer data and how they can, build a moat around their customers and how they can outreach to the marketplace. But the first problem that needed to be solved for is how do we manage an engaged opportunity to an estimate, a job, and a paid invoice. And now, fortunately, technology is allowing those contractors of any size, even smaller contractors, to level up and think about their business much more differently, which is so exciting.
Totally. What do you think about this? Like, all the different tools, Matt, this might be a question for you. So what are you thinking about? I'm juggling 6, 7, 10 different tools. Where does that fall apart? Where is that going to break? And like, when I think about it's okay, I'll just keep tacking things onto this machine, what problems am I probably in for?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just a rampant issue because, everybody, even including me, sometimes has, shiny object syndrome, where it's like, oh, new thing, it's going to solve all my problems. I'm just going to add it on to my whole stack. And then my stack gets to be 10, 12, 14, sometimes 20 tools that just end up collecting dust after a while because they don't work well. And The issue really starts to become where financial metrics don't match sales metrics. When I was, when I was running the roofing company, I managed a team of 8 salespeople, and those salespeople trying to get somebody to actually enter data into a system, a CRM, and have it accurate and keep it updated and put notes on it is extremely hard, especially when they're salespeople, because that's just not they're good at closing deals. They're not good at keeping accurate data. So matching that data with like your actual financial data. So because 99% of the time you're making your decisions based on the you call your source of truth, your CRM, right? But what happens when your finance team goes to invoice the customer and they invoice that customer, let's say it's a roof project and it's $18,000. And then they find out, oh, there was some damage, there was some things that were done, we're going to credit the invoice $2,000. That happens pretty frequently. When that data, that total job value doesn't get put back into the CRM and you're making decisions based on the CRM data, you've got a big problem now. So, and those issues compound very, very quickly and people don't realize it. So I think that's one big place where that disconnected data is an issue.
One of the things you said there that really resonates with me is you said sometimes you get up to like 20 different tools, things like that. I've personally been a part of a number of organizations where at various points in our growth, as a software company, you tend to have a lot of software. But usually it was about 1-to-1. So you'd get to 20 employees, you had about 20 pieces of software. And I've usually seen that go up to about 100. When we would get to about 100 employees at 2 different companies I can think of specifically, I looked when we had the vendor list, we had 100 different tools. So it was just about every time you hired somebody, they came with a new piece of software. It's like their work buddy they would show up with. Yeah. And then maintaining all that and getting everybody to enter everything, that's a disaster. And I've also generally led sales organizations in my career, and I lead our sales organization. And this is a real tactical specific recommendation I would give to anybody, any one of our customers as well in business at all, which is if you have conversations with customers through telephone, through Zoom, through any recordable mechanism, there are plenty of tools now in this world, and I used an application called relay.app to do this. Super easy. So we use Fathom for a call recording. So you can use any call recording thing you want, any phone recording thing you want. It doesn't matter. As long as it has an API you can connect into, what I did was I had my Gemini call, Gemini. So we use Gemini as Google. So what you do is you have Gemini connect to that API. Every time a call is recorded, Gemini takes a transcript and puts it into a folder in Google for me automatically. Transcribes the call, puts it in there. Takes whatever the transcription tool, like behind the scenes link is. And so now what I end up with is I end up with a call recording turned into a transcript in a place where I can then put it in lots of other places without that tool needing to connect to lots of things. And what I did with that is I actually had that same tool, Relay, connect to my Google Drive. It attaches an AI robot that I was able to just very simply prompt. I mean, we're talking about prompting this thing up in about a minute. It goes through every transcript and it looks for key specific things that I need to collect on every single sales transaction. So my sales reps never enter a lot of stuff into the CRM. One, they don't have to even think about asking to make sure that it's like they just have the conversation. They're not sitting there checking boxes. You ever had that experience where you're talking to somebody in a customer success role or a CSR role, and they're just basically saying, I got to fill out a form, and you can almost feel the form they're filling out? It's not a great experience. So what you do is you get them out of form filling mode and you get them into problem solving and conversation mode, and you let the robot take all that great data that you need, put it into your FSM or your CRM for you automatically, and it's always right and it's always there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's a big thing. It's like you when you start requiring, naturally you need to have SOPs in the organization. But when you start requiring checkbox to confirm every single thing's done, you're going to start making your employees upset. Like they're eventually just not going to do it out of spite. That's a whole nother problem. But they just start getting frustrated because it's just taking them more time to actually enter the data than it is to actually do their job, which is like for a sales guy, close a deal. And for us, like in meetings, like we record meetings just like you on your sales calls. The meetings get recorded and tasks get assigned to specific users based on those meetings, and then are validated by managers. And it just gives you so much more when you use a tool like that to bring all of your data to one place, get processed, and then automatically fill out all the fields for you. It's a game changer. And trust me, when I say your employees love it, they are just like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. Thank you.
What I found is in my business, it was more accurate, it was more timely, and they were happier to not have to do it. Now, all these tools, we've all been on calls nowadays. You get into some internal meeting or external meeting, and there's like 50 call recorders on there. Everybody's got a robot showing up. And more often than not, when I ask people and really dig in, I'm like, hey, what do you do with all that data? The answer is nothing. They don't do anything. They get a summary email that they don't look at. And what I'm saying to everybody in business operations and sales and any part of running your business is collecting data for no purpose is a really low value use of your time. Getting a system to collect data so that you can do a high value thing with it is a really useful thing inside your business. Automate all that mundane stuff and then answer really important questions. Like, hey, when we get back to customers in this time frame, how often do we win? What's the house value where we're winning? What's the house size where we're winning? What's the problems where we make the most money? Things that actually make your business better versus how do I collect more data just for the sake of having it and doing nothing with it.
Yeah, and within the deployment of that technology, and Jamie, listening to you talk about that, for SMB mid-market, early mid-stage contractors, it's not necessarily that they need to go out and invest in a separate technology like Gong Chorus. Maybe that's more enterprise value in some cases. What you just described with Relay, you built in a matter of a few minutes, and it's connected, and it is constantly sanitizing the data and making it more valuable. And but that plus one is helping the team members realize the operational efficiency and the task management that they don't have to jump back into at 5:15 p.m. after a day when they don't remember what happened on that call. And if it's connected to that CRM, then it's immensely powerful.
Yeah, what I did was, and what I would recommend to anybody, to just get started with getting tools that help you remove the mundane parts of your business and improve the output. I found the cheapest call recording tool I could possibly find that got me the data access I needed. And then I connected a tool to put it into a transcript. And then I connected the tool to put it into my CRM. And yeah, I had to figure out how to do that. And it took me an hour to learn. And I was able to deploy it. And now it's done. It's over. I have estimated that I've saved my sales team 20 to 25% of their day in mundane tasks through just small efficiency savings. And I guarantee you they're in every single one of y'all's businesses if you're watching this, without a doubt. Cool. So one other question I had about this is when you're evaluating software, think about what is important, right? What are you looking for when you actually say, well, I need to go buy some tools. I just told you what I wanted. I wanted the cheapest, fastest processing thing I could get to the data. But what is like a rubric or a guide or some of the things I should think about when I'm going and looking at a vendor, partner, solution, tool to solve a problem? Matt?
I think there's a lot of things to look at. And number one, it kind of really starts is like, how open are they with their data? Like if, I had the problem running the roofing company. I was stuck in a CRM, won't name who they are, but they locked my data down. Like it was their data and they are the only ones that could access it. Trying to get that from them or get access from other tools, or connect some of my tools to that data, it was impossible. Like they just don't allow it. They say, it's locked API. We want to charge our vendors or our API partners, annual cost to connect. So talk to them, make them pay us to get your data out. And I'm like, that's not the way it should be. And that's where I personally have a problem with I know, like we said, we throw these terms legacy softwares around, but a lot of these legacy softwares are trapping these contractors' data in this data jail and saying you can't have it. You can't let your other tools talk to it because they're not paying us. So that's one thing I'd always look out for is, can that whatever tool stack you're buying, do they allow open access to their API? Do they have an MCP server? Do they have, XYZ?
Yeah,
That's a good note. Strickland.
there's an interesting evolution that hasn't actually, crossed the finish line. But 4 or 5 years ago, there was the concept of, kind of an open data manifesto. And there would be kind of an agreement between technology providers to make that data, not publicly available, but available to the contractor. And it is their data. And most of the MSAs talk about it being their data. But over the last 4 or 5 years, as all this influx of investment has happened, there's been kind of a fissure, and some technology providers fall more on the Shopify kind of segment, and they're very integration friendly, and they believe in the power of providing data and providing access to data. On the other side, not to be too logo focused, but Amazon wants to own everything and control everything. And so I think that, back to Jimmy's kind of comment, what should you be looking for? You do want to look for providers, at least starting with your finance and accounting tool and your CRM platform, that are data friendly and have a relatively robust API integration strategy, even if it's through Zapier, if it's not direct. But that's incredibly powerful, because if you can't identify that, and you can't have your data talking in an intelligent way and removing operational friction from the field, then that technology investment is going to fall flat. People are going to get frustrated. But the good news is that the industry and the technology and SaaS companies that are passionate about helping the trades level up, I think have landed more on that open architecture posture.
Yeah, I agree. I see it. It's a lot more newer platforms, and even some of the older platforms are really starting to open up their data layer, and allow people to have access to it. So, but I 100% agree. Like, if they don't give you the data that you've collected. I would say also read the privacy statement in any of the softwares you use. See where your data is going. See, is it being used to train their data? And if so, why? Can you opt out of it? So on and so forth. So,
yeah.
Yeah. And I think transparency there is important too, right? So, I know for our business, we're really upfront with our customers around, we anonymize, but use the data across the entire network to improve the network effect of our system, right? So all of our customers opt in and then benefit from that. And we're just upfront about that. It's not hidden behind anything. And so I think working with a vendor who there's not going to be any gotcha moments at the end, right? Because you might like not to work with a vendor, and that's okay too, right? I always say that salespeople's jobs is to get somebody to the right decision, even if it's a no. And so if you don't end up working with them because that's the way they operate doesn't work for you, you should know about that before you go in. It shouldn't be I'm here and now I'm stuck here and I don't like where I am situation, which sounds like, Matt, you were found yourself in a situation you didn't particularly like, that you wouldn't have picked had you had maybe the choice to go in eyes wide open.
Yeah, 100%. Like, if I would have had more ability to select that at the beginning, that it had already been adopted by the company I was with. But
Yeah.
I would have said absolutely not, because I'm never going to be able to I'm never going to be able to take action on my data outside of the platform. And if they don't create a very specific tool that I need, then I can't do anything with it. It's what now I'm going to make my sales reps enter, double data entry into another system. No, I'm not going to do that. They're not going to even want to do that. So
that's a great point. I think it leads to our next topic, which is, okay, so we've got this base layer, but nothing's going to do, very few tools are going to do everything perfectly. And so when you start thinking about a tech stack, it means you are admitting or acknowledging that you need some different things to accomplish all of your jobs to be done in your business. Now, those might evolve over time too, right? Like, the thing I would say about picking technology is right size it to your business, right? I don't need a $20 billion, $1 million ERP if I'm just getting going, right? It's probably, don't call SAP today unless you really need it. So with that said, how does AI fit into this? Like, what does AI mean when you start thinking about, I want to access my data, I want to be able to do these things? What are you thinking about where AI is currently really making an impact, ROI, measurable outcome impact inside of trades business, home service business, contractor? And then where do you see that potentially going over the course of next year?
Well, I think that it for me it goes kind of in two parts, but the AI layers now are starting to make people much more efficient because it's taking out all the tedious work that goes into data entry, that goes into creation, generation of emails, and all that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of the AI today, it is way different than what it was, a few years ago. But understanding that it's agentic architecture. When I say agentic, I mean it has different specializations. But yeah, I think it's really having an AI native software is something built from AI to start. Like we built the tools, then we built the database, then we built the UI. Well, a lot of the AI capable stuff is, we built this huge database and now we just wrapped AI around it. So I don't know if that answers the question.
I think it's a
Yeah,
good start, Strick.
yeah, I can try to follow up on that. I totally agree with everything Matt said. I think that the first step in terms of like action and driving the ROI that you need out of your existing technology investments, going back to that, I mean, the money's flowing in so quickly, and any of the platforms or technologies you've already invested in, make sure that you've optimized them. Make sure that you understand what's been recently released on their product roadmap. Been on a lot of, customer calls with really amazing operators, and as much as, we were pushing out our release notes, they weren't utilizing the available infrastructure. In terms of how AI is layered into all that, there is a lot that's happening natively. Some of it is, ChatGPT getting slapped on to an existing workflow. But make sure that you're taking full advantage of your existing technology investments. Beyond that, and I know, Jimmy, we're going to talk about the build versus buy. Some of it, so this question makes me want to go there too. The coolest thing about working in the trades is that operators are entrepreneurs and they see what's happening in technology, and so they're asking themselves the question, why would I invest in this if I can build it? I can change out a 20-ton cooler on a 5-story building, or I can swap out a roof, whatever the case is. And so they're willing to get their hands dirty, but they fall into a trap sometimes, that they believe that they can just build as opposed to buy. And I would change the build versus buy to invest versus build, maintain, and evolve over time, because you're not going to build it once. And so, take advantage of the hard work that the world of technology has invested in the trades, because there's so many solutions that are already out there. But make the most out of whatever technology you've already invested in, and understand what its expansion capabilities are.
Yeah,
And
I love that. And Jimmy, tell me if you think this is a good transition to that build versus buy, because I love that conversation. I have it, multiple times a week with customers, and when they're trying to figure out, should I, I need this other feature, should I do this, and should I just Claude code it, or should I, build it, hire a guy in house to do it. So if you think it's a good time to transition to that, I'd love that conversation.
let's talk about it, because Matt, you're building a software company. I'm building a software company. We're building tools every day. So we have our own perspective. But I'd love to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, my thoughts on build versus buy, like, we have customers that are like, all right, hey, I've fully adopted AI. I'm all in to Claude and ChatGPT, and I'm doing this Claude code, and here's a cool little, fleet tracker project I built, and can I get this implemented into the CRM? And it's like, okay, you've got this. What happens when a dependency within that software breaks? What happens, when something goes out of version control, when something, there's a security release or security breach, and that, like, what happens then? And that goes into your maintenance, Strick, about like, how are you going to maintain that software over time? You need to have somebody full time to do that after you start to build and build and build. And I'm like, I had this specific conversation with one customer last week, was like, you're going to hire a developer in-house to do this. You're going to pay, and it specifically was to build a mini CRM for them, right? And I was like, what are you going to pay that developer? And he's like, I don't know, probably around 75 grand for a junior developer. And I was like, Okay, then you got payroll tax and you've got 401k, you've got health insurance. So you're going to pay them roughly 100 grand over the next year.
At
What's it going to
least
cost you to buy
that's low.
Yeah,
That's real low.
that's
That's real low,
low,
by the way.
you know?
Yeah, it's
And,
probably 125 to 125, but either way, that's fine.
and yeah, 125 grand. When that exact same way better solution that's been developed is much more mature is already out there for 60 grand. Like, what are we doing here? Like, what's the point?
So I have a couple of things that I think about in this regard because I get asked this question. So we built GlassHouse. We're an outbound digital door knocking tool. So if you don't know who we are, we let you basically email and text anybody in the country compliantly and get in touch with people and drive leads and have an AI conversation pick up and help you do outbound sales. We're an outbound sales platform. And so when I go to somebody, that's usually a new thing for them. And so they're like, well, how does that work? Here's how it works. And what I realized very quickly is there was maybe not an understanding of, well, can I just text on my phone? I had some people say that. They say, can I just, and you may have heard this in your career too, like, well, I could just do this other way, or I have my other vendor offers blah, 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 or I could just build whatever the thing is. So I went and I did the math and I tried to figure out, okay, what if I did want to build this myself? Now, you say, you did, Jimmy. I didn't build it. Engineers built it. We have full-time software engineers who work here. They built it. What if I just try to hack this thing together myself? I use some chat GPTs and things like that. It would require that I integrate 12 different other tools together. I would still not be building it myself. I would just be stitching together 12 other things that other people had built. And it goes back to this problem someone tried to solve, I want to say in the 60s or the 70s. They tried to figure out what would it take to build a toaster by yourself if you, as one man, wanted to build a toaster. And the cost was going to be into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it took this person a year to try and figure out how to do it all. You got to go mine the ore and make the metal. And, you got to create your own electricity. And like, what do you mean build it yourself? Like make your own computer? How down the tech stack are you going into this experience of building something yourself? That's my first big kind of question. And then when you say, well, ChatGPT, anybody can build anything nowadays. And that's where I went to. I said, well, maybe. But then I look around and say, what am I getting from a technology partner or vendor? And generally speaking, what I'm looking for is expertise, understanding of the problem, something that'll work all the time. It scales. For a GlassHouse, particularly, it's regulatory complexity, right? They've solved other problems I don't even know to think to solve at this point. What happens when you build your own CRM from scratch and you realize that you're paying 3 times as much as everybody else for payment processing because you are just you? And so you're basically bleeding out on all your credit card processing so that you could save an extra $800 on the front door on a piece of software that ends up costing you $8,000 a month in payment processing. It's like all of this extra stuff, to me, gets a little bit lost in the look what I can do versus, is this the thing that makes your business better? Is this like you're in the business of making home service business service calls? Does building your own whatever make you more money? Does it save you more time? Does it make your business better? And if not, I'd really look super hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like all it takes, just go into your regulatory compliance stuff. All it takes is a couple upset user or end people that you've maybe contacting the FTC, filing a complaint. Next thing you know, you've got to go through an audit. And not to mention all your PII that you're storing. Like what happens if you got a data breach, somebody breaks in, steals all your customers' information you've collected. That's a whole nother beast. And a lot of people don't think about that.
I'll end this part with this, which is really, obviously the chair that I sit in, and, we're talking about your technologists here say, oh, well, you all just think of course you say it that way because that's what you get paid to say. Jimmy, of course you think everyone should buy your software. You sell it. Like that is 100% true. I do think you should all buy the software and we do sell it if it's a good fit for them. But it doesn't make anybody wrong about the risks of the reality of, do you want to be a software development company or do you want to be a different type of company that brings software in? At some level, every company in the world is becoming a technology company in terms of integrating technology into their business. And the difference between I went and got, ContractorHUB or I went and Claude coded my own thing that's 10% as good and 4 times as expensive, you partnered with technology in both of those equations. It's just a matter of how much of your time do you want to waste trying to figure out what somebody else already did.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And Jimmy, I want to add on to something you said because I really like the way that you framed it. Looking for technology partners, like true partners. You're not signing up for DocuSign. That's a horizontal SaaS solution. You're looking for a technology partner that really truly understands the highly verticalized complexity of the trades. And you find those types of partners, and then all of a sudden, what AI can do behind the scenes within the technology allows those entrepreneurs that are maybe shiny object, confused or distracted, realize that now the technology partners that I have allows my business to operate more efficiently. It also allows me to do what I'm most passionate about and what AI can never do. Be a true leader, focus on hiring the best talent. Still, the biggest challenge is the skilled trades gap and finding team members that are engaged and finding a way to compensate them. Going back to some of Matt's comments around, finance and revenue and commissions and things like that. But it's not that AI is going to replace jobs. I think that where I've seen some of the most successful contractors and a lot of different verticalized trades, they realize that implementing technology and AI is enabling them to redeploy that human capital to more complicated projects that AI can't understand, can't solve for, and can't create action around. And I think that not only is that it's liberating, but it's also nourishing. As a leader, you want to be able to do things that nourish your team, and that's something that AI, today isn't able to do because of the power of human connection.
Yeah,
well,
100%.
And let's talk about that. Let's talk about some new trends. So what are you seeing now? Things are moving super fast. There's lots of different technology, but also just trends in the trades in general, just trends we see in the market. What are you seeing out there, Strick?
I'll focus on the point solution bucket, if you will.
Okay.
There's so much happening with AI, voice capture automation. You talked about some of the the tools that are available out there, but on the AI virtual answering front, in terms of agentic, you've got Broccoli and Lace and Evoca and a number of others that are focused on inbound as well as coaching technicians in the field, which I think is really interesting because I've talked to a lot of service managers that have shared feedback with technicians time and time and time again, junior and senior technicians. And so there's some really cool innovation that's happening in that space. I think telematics as a subcategory of point solutions is still going to continue to evolve. But I mentioned whether it's Links Up or Geotab, but tracking your some of your most valuable assets, your vehicles, that's evolving really quickly, and the manufacturers and the automotive sector are jumping into that as well. It's something to keep an eye on. I would say, back to Matt's comments, it's really about finding a way to connect all of those different solutions, being disciplined around not creating scope creep on your tech stack. Make sure that every 6 months you're looking at your user login and utilization of the tools. If it's not happening with your team, that's a good litmus test for whether or not your ROI is there. Things are moving so fast. It's exciting, but it can be a little bit disorienting to folks. But it's hard for folks to keep up with that, and especially if you're contractors and you're in a 140-degree attic in July in Austin, Texas, or you're climbing through a crawl space trying to fix things and manage a business. It's hard to stay on top of all this. So I go back to what you said. Find those 2 or 3 key technology partners that understand the space incredibly well, that you believe in what they're doing, and that they can inform your business decisions.
Nice.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like the partnership aspect, and that's just a mentality shift that needs to happen. I believe in software, and the way people buy software, specifically understanding that somebody's not just selling you a product and saying, "Hey, go on your merry way, have fun. If it works, we're happy. If it doesn't, we'll get another customer." And it goes more into this almost mini consulting layer, like within the application, that helps you understand things that you might not have known or thought about looking at before. We had a customer a couple weeks ago that came to us and was like, "I clicked on this thing and I saw these numbers, and I just realized I should have been measuring this for the last 5 years." And that was like, it was like that light bulb aha moment. Look for the vendors, the specialty operators like GlassHouse, like Workiz, like these companies that really understand the space, and look for a partner, not somebody just selling you a product and saying good luck.
It's a good theme. I'll take it to just a different industry kind of trend over the last couple of years. When I talk to people, it tends to be about lead gen, top of the funnel. That's where our business lives, and that's where the conversations we generally have, right? So Matt, you're having conversations way further into their day-to-day operations. Strick, you've had a lot of those conversations in your career as well. And so that's maybe a different kind of looking out into the world a little bit. And what I continue to hear is every year my cost of lead go up, every year the conversion rate goes down. So every year it's like a compounding effect. It gets more expensive for worse results. And this space is just, to your point earlier, Strick, it's really attractive for investment. And when all that investment comes in, a bunch of people just keep showing up to the party, and it's growing way faster than the rest of the economy. And they're not building a lot more houses. They're certainly not building them at the pace at which home service businesses are entering. So it is just getting more and more competitive out there. And I'll just highlight that statement from earlier, which is the things that built the $50 million and the $100 million local home service area business that you are looking up to right now saying, I'm going to be them, aren't going to get you there. That is my absolute belief. And it can be GEO. It can be doing outbound. It can be lots of different things. But I would say that the new trends I'm seeing is that younger businesses and businesses who are looking at how to solve those problems are starting to look around the edges and embrace, how am I going to use AI? How am I going to look at a different type of search? And how am I going to get found in a different way? Everybody has 500 Google reviews, right? Like, get me 500 Google reviews. Cool. That is called par for the course today. So how are you putting them in front of people in a different way? How are you getting them to help you show up in a different way? I generally just believe, as a business operator, my job is to look real different, not real better, because the customer decides what's right for them, what better looks like. I just need to create a lot of differentiation and look a lot different. So I need to show up different, be different, operate different, and if I'm trying to have a different outcome, I'm going to do something a little different. And that is just a general trend without a lot of specifics around go do ads on this platform. But I just don't see home service businesses getting the results they want by continuing to do the tried and true things that are already clearly not working the way they used to.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of it's a tale of two cities, because it's certainly there's not a cheat code anymore for digital pay performance strategy, whether it's Google or the other lead aggregators. But when I look at the thought leaders in the space, and Jimmy and Matt, you guys probably know some of these folks, but Dan Antonelli at KickCharge or Tommy Mello over at A1, it's back to the basics. It's how can I create operational efficiency within my business to do the basics incredibly well, to build a good brand that is recognized on the reputation management platforms. But what can I do to make sure that experience when I send a technician to a home is absolutely exceptional? And then the technology is just there to remove operational friction.
Yeah.
I used to be in the hospitality space. My first job in technology was hospitality technology in restaurants. And that was a pretty fun space to be in. And I had a team member, and she said it really succinctly. I think she said it perfectly. She goes, nobody ever went out to dinner and left and said, wasn't the technology so great? They don't care about, I tell my team members all the time, nobody gives a rat's ass about our software. Nobody wants to buy our software. They want a problem solved. The same thing goes for the homeowner. The homeowner doesn't want technology in their life around you fixing their roof. They don't care if you have a badass FSM and that's helping you mow their lawn. They just want the lawn mowed. I have 7 vendors for my house, and I don't care what FSMs they use as long as they get the job done in a way that they show up every Thursday and mow the lawn, and they show up every month and the pests aren't there. I want the absence of pests and shorter grass at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right on. Okay, rapid fire. Last question. We'll just take one here. One tool or change you think every contractor should really watch out for or think about over the course of the next year, Matt? What are you thinking?
really adopting agentic AI. The things that is going to change are going to be the fact that these AI platforms are going to be able to complete a lot more tasks for you very, very quickly. So keeping on the lookout of companies and businesses that do use agents in their workflows that help you do multiple tasks at once. I think that's going to be critical over the next year.
Nice. Strick, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You have a lot of experience in the CRM and FSM world and enterprise worlds. Who are some of the players you see in specific verticals who are really doing some innovative things in those spaces, in the FSM layer, that foundational layer? And maybe call it a couple. We're not speaking poorly of anybody. We're just calling it a couple where, hey, these guys seem like they're doing something pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll talk about that platform bucket for just a second.
Yep.
CRM for the trades, FSM. So the cool thing is that there are a lot of really innovative, easy to adopt platforms for small and medium sized businesses. It could be ContractorHUB layered in and or looked at alongside Workiz, House Call Pro, Jobber. Great, very economical, intuitive, easy to onboard. When you get into vertical specificity, then if you're in pool care, Skimmer's done a great job on the roofing side, and a roofer's doing really well. Richie and his team over there. As it relates to enterprise, upper mid market, and growing, obviously ServiceTitan, who I've had the privilege of serving a little bit of time with, is doing amazing things at the upper mid market and enterprise space. It's more of an investment, but assuming that you've got the bandwidth, and if you choose to partner with a consultant, ServiceTitan is incredibly powerful. There are a lot of those consulting and coaching groups out there, but Jenny Benberk over at Powerhouse Consulting here in Austin, Texas is amazing. I think it's getting your bachelor degree and understanding the core requirements for financial and accounting tools paired with your core CRM. That's the starting point. And then if you do a great job there, then go to their integrations page on their website, see who they integrate with, and that's a great reference point for the point solutions that you might want to investigate and prioritize, because they've already done all the vetting, they've already done all the work for the API integration, and let that hard work save you a bunch of time and energy. And as I've said a few different times, if you get this recipe right, it gives you time back in your day. Make it to more baseball games, make it to more dance recitals. That's powerful. Shout out to my son James, who's playing in the state championship on Saturday in Texas.
Nice.
For baseball.
There you go. Congratulations.
That's awesome. I'll leave my last as a thought really is I'm obsessed this year with not talking about cost per lead. I'm talking about customer acquisition costs and long-term values. And I think that as a home service business, there's not enough emphasis on customer acquisition and lifetime value of a customer. It's all about kind of like marketing generated lead cost metrics. And while those are inputs into those, at the end of the day, I want to know how much is it going to cost me to get a customer, and how much money is the lifetime relationship of that customer going to be, because I can make good investments. If I know that customer is going to be somebody I can sell multiple things to over time, go back to, rely on being a long-term relationship, then I can make a investment up front. And I need to know how much I'm going to spend all in, not just the cost of a lead. What's my cost of my time? Me and my wife bought and ran a home service business for a couple of years as we got into this. And what I found was the math, it was a franchise, the math of the franchise system was not accounting for a whole bunch of cost around, you got to drive out there and give the estimates. And then you got to pay for the, other associated lead costs like membership to BNI groups and all this other stuff. Take that total cost and divide your actual customer acquisition quantity and say, this is what it really costs, including time, materials, labor, the whole thing, every single penny. And then how much value do you get from that customer? And I know it takes some time to figure that out over time. You got to be alive long enough to know if they stick around for 3 years. You need 3 years to find out. But if you don't know those numbers, then everything looks like an immediate on fire today problem. And you're also not building a sustainable business, which doesn't put you in a baseball game and it doesn't put more money in your pocket.
Yep.
So awesome. No. Hey, Matt, Strick, I super appreciate you guys taking some time to talk with us, with me today. This is really fun. We should definitely do it again sometime.
No, it was really fun. Jimmy, thanks for the invitation. And Matt, pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you guys too, and thanks again. I love having these talks and helping people solve issues because I love Strick and Jimmy. What you guys say, it's all about giving back the contractor their time, and if we can give them back that. I was working 18-hour days before. I don't ever want to do that again. So let's give it back to them and show them all the failures that I've made in the past to save them that time. So
Awesome. Can't say any better. Cool. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.